Hey, what's going on everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and if you're like me, well, maybe. You might like the PlayStation a little bit. I know this isn't the original PlayStation, this is the PlayStation Slim or the PS1, but I absolutely love this system, and this model as well too is great. But point is, the original PlayStation, I absolutely love it. I love the game library for it, I love the console itself, I love modding it, and I have a lot of nostalgia for it. However, I started delving into the world of ROM hacks for the original PlayStation, and I was surprised to find out that there's a good amount of support. It was mainly prompted when I found out that the game right behind me here, Persona 2 Innocent Sin, was only released in Japan, and it has a full English fan translation, which is quite easy to apply as long as you have a copy of the game itself available, and therefore, after that, you can at least play the game in Japanese or English, depending on the patch you're using, or if you're using the original one. But this made me look at some other fan hacks and ROM hacks as well too, and I decided that I wanted to make a video covering these because some of them can be a little bit confusing. There's a few different formats out there, and some of them might just have custom patchers which you need to work your way around. So we have a few examples here. Some of these games are going to include quality of life hacks, some of them are going to include fan translations right here, and the last one's going to be kind of a bit of a remaster in a way. I don't know. I guess we'll see. Now, first things first, as you can see, I do have the original games right here, so this is going to assume that you have the original games, and you are going to be backing these up. This is what the tutorial is going to be covering. I'm not going to be covering anything in regards to downloaded versions of games. I'm not going to be supporting that. If you want to try these out yourself, your mileage may vary. However, I'm going to be showing the process from start to finish on dumped original discs such as this. The next thing you need to know is that you're going to need specific versions of games depending on your regions and such. So for example, I have my copy of Resident Evil for the original PlayStation right here, and if I was to patch this, I would need to find a patch for the NTSC-U version, and the ID here is SLUS00170. You can typically find it on the cover, on the spine of the disc, and of course on the disc itself. It's available on all of those places, but I'd say the disc would be the most accurate place to find it. So what I'm saying is, if you have a disc version which does not match, then the patches are not designed for that. Or if you have a different region of game, for example, if you're using a NTSC-U patch on Resident Evil, but you only have a NTSC-J or NTSC-PAL version, that patch is not designed for those. So you need to make sure you have a matching copy of the game available that you want to patch. And the last thing here is variants before we delve into this. You see, I'm waving around my original version of Resident Evil here, but this is more of a placeholder if anything, because the Resident Evil patch I'm going to be showing you all just as a demonstration does not work on the original Resident Evil. It also does not work on Resident Evil Director's Cut. The one you need is going to be Resident Evil Director's Cut with DualShock. So in regards to these other two versions, I don't know, maybe you could give them to your dog or something. I'm personally giving them to Lily, and we'll see how they turn out. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to be using a Windows-based PC for this, and this is again going to assume you have your disk available, you have a way to rip it to your PC, and you have a way to run these applications. And of course, play the games as well too. And playing the games, the last part, that's going to be the fun part, but you can play them however you want to. You can play them on an original PlayStation, you can emulate them somehow, do whatever you want to, as long as you can play them, you should be happy. Alright, so over at the PC, there's going to be a few things that we need to download. The first is going to be a method of ripping your disk over to your PC. This is going to, of course, require at minimum a CD drive, but you're also going to need a program, and the program that I personally use is ImgBurn. It's free, it's easy enough to use, and there's going to be a link down below in the description where you could just download it here and pick your mayor to download it from. Next up, these are going to be a few common tools that I recommend. The first one is going to be Delta Patcher, and this is for XDelta files. The next one here is going to be PPF-O-Matic, and these can just be downloaded easily from the download file now option. Now, unfortunately, this is not going to be one size fits all. You're going to run into different types of patches for different games, and that's why I'm recommending these two applications. They might not serve all of your needs, but we're going to be looking at three specific examples here. The first one is going to be Castlevania Symphony of the Night quality hack, and this just changes your quality of life for the game itself. So there's a few important pieces of information we must look at here. First of all is going to be the game itself, which is Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Next is going to be the patching information, and as you can see, this targets bin Q, meaning that you have to have this game ripped in bin Q format. Over here, it's also going to show you the exact version of the game you'll need, so that's going to be your ID, which I was recommending, and this is going to say what region it is for. And then the patch format is also going to be important. This one is PPF, so PPF-O-Matic is going to be needed. The next one I'm going to be doing, which prompted this entire video, is Persona 2 Innocent Sin. Now, as you can see, it says requires custom patcher, and this is an example of a custom patcher. So here we need to look at the title itself, make sure it's for the PlayStation, and then we need to make sure our disc checks out with this ID. And we also have right here some MD5 hashes, which I'll be able to explain that as well too. And this you can just download easily. The last example I'm going to be using is Resident Evil Remaster version for Resident Evil Director's Cut. And again, this one is for Resident Evil Director's Cut. It is targeting bin Q. The name here, check this out, it's Resident Evil Director's Cut DualShock version and the USA version, but here we're going to get into another thing as well too, where you're seeing it is track 1. But for this download, you can kind of find it all over the place. You have the exact disk ID right there, and this download is over 30 megabytes, so generally if a patch is over 30 megabytes, you're going to have to download it from an external site, not from ROM hacking itself, if you're using ROM hacking as your download place. Now again, these are going to be 3 different methods for 3 different games, and it's not going to be an exact one-size-fits-all, but this should be a general guide here, which should work for most games. I'm going to have these linked down below in the description if for whatever reason you'd like to follow along using these exact games and patches, but this tutorial is not only limited to these games and patches. So now that we have everything downloaded, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an image file of a disk. Now thankfully I've ripped over the other 2 games, but I have yet to rip over my copy of Persona 2. So all you need to do is open up ImgBurn after you install it and go to create image file from disk. Now if you haven't loaded in your disk, this is the time to do it, so pop in your disk and wait a few seconds for everything to populate. Now that we have all of our information loaded, click right here on this folder and select where you want to save your game. I already have a folder here, so I'm going to call it Persona 2 Innocent Sin. And right here, this is going to be important. When you're saving this, you need to pick your file type you want to save it as. You can save it as a bin file, an image file, or an ISO file. Now, our other 2 games have explicitly said that they expect bin Q. And this game here I know is expecting either a bin or an image file. However, I'm going to select bin for this. This is going to be completely dependent on the type of patch you're using, but most of the time your patches are expecting a bin Q file. But again, always read the notes on them so you can be sure you're ripping it to the right format. But once you pick where you want to do this, hit save, and now click this button here and wait a few minutes. And once this is done, you can press OK and eject your disk. So at this point, we should have a few different things. We're going to have all of our hacks here, and I'm going to have my utilities in a separate folder, and then my games are all going to be right here, as you can see. So these are all the games that I've ripped over, and the first thing that I would recommend you do is for any game that you're going to be patching, make a backup of it. So because we are going to be doing this here with all 3 of the games, I'm just going to copy and paste, and I'm just making a direct copy of these games. The reason why I'm doing this again is because 1, I don't want to pull out the disk again if anything goes wrong, and 2, sometimes when you patch these games, depending on the patcher, or for most patchers in all honesty, when you patch the ISO file itself, you're going to patch it right there. So if you patch it and your game fails to work after you patch it, you have to rip your game again in order to restore it. So that way we have our original untouched ISO or bin Q files, and then we have our new copies right here, which these copies we're going to patch. So I don't care if they change or not. But I'm also going to rename this to Games Patched. So that way I know which folder is going to be for my patched games. Alright, so first of all, let's take a look at that Persona 2 Innocent Sin translation. So I'm going to go in here, and typically your patches are going to be in an archive like this, and you can simply just extract it like so. And as you can see, this is going to be different than all the others because this is a custom patcher. So it's going to contain a README, a patcher exe, in a patch.pts file, which this has to be the patch. But right here, I would always recommend referring to the README as well as the romhacking.net guide or wherever you got your patch from. Now, there might be a lot of information to take in here, and again, this is just one example, but the reason why I knew about this before is because here it even says create the game's ISO using one of many disk rippers around the net, and it mentions a few of them here, which ImgBurn is one of them that was mentioned. And here it was asking for a .bin or .image file. So we already know about this, but all we need to do is follow the rest of the instructions available depending on what was made available. But there's one more thing I want to make note of. Here you're seeing these things like these MD5 files or CRC files or SHA-1 hashes here. And what these are hashes for the disk image itself, meaning that essentially you take the disk image that you've ripped over and you put it through a hash checking program, and it should generate a hash like this. And that will mean that you will have the exact same copy of the game to work with the developers behind this patch had. And some of them are going to be MD5, some of them are going to be CRC32, some of them are going to be SHA-1, for example. It just depends. Now, I'm going to show you checking this one out, for example. Now, the site I've been using to check my hashes recently has been onlinemd5.com. There's going to be a link to this down below in the description, and you're also more than welcome, if this doesn't work for you, to try using a offline or another MD5 checker. But all you need to do is select your checksum type, which it's going to be MD5. Copy out the MD5 here, as you can see with Persona. This is what it's supposed to be, so this is an untouched copy of the game, and this is what you're supposed to get after you patch your game. So I'm going to grab this and copy it out. I'm going to paste it into here to compare with, and then here I'm going to click on choose file. Navigate to where your game is. I'm going to go into my game is patched, even though this is the unpatched one, Persona 2, and you always want to get the actual game file itself, which is the bin file, and click open. Now this is going to take a few seconds here, so just wait and be patient while this checks the hash of your disk image. Now check this out, they're both matching. This means that I have an accurate copy of my game that I made myself, and it is accurate to the exact same version that the patch creator also uses and recommends. So now that we have a matching MD5 hash, we are good to continue. So again, reading the instructions, we just have to launch the patcher itself. I'll go ahead and say yes to this, and it's asking for two files. The first is going to be the ISO file, which ISO, image, bin, it's all going to be really the same thing, just in a different package, but they mean your game file. So click on browse, navigate to where your game is that you want to patch. So mine is Persona 2. Make sure you get the ISO file or whatever file you're using. Mine is again a bin image, just like right there, and click on open. Next up, you need the patch file. So click browse, go over to your patch, and we're going to need the patch PTS file. And at this point, click on patch it. Once it says operation complete, that is fantastic. We can press OK and close out of this. And now at this point, my game in games_patched, Persona 2 Innocent Sin, that's okay, it worked just fine. But right here, this should be a patched version of the game. Now, if you want to test for accuracy of this, since we have a after MD5, I'm going to double click this and copy it out. I'm going to go to my MD5 hash checker, paste in compare here, MD5, and choose file. And this time around, I'm going to select the patched version. So I'm just going to wait a few seconds here again and let it do its thing. And check it out, we have another matching checksum, which means this is the expected disk image we should have if it has been patched with the English translation. So at this point, we are done. Now you can go technical like this, but in my experience, most of the time it's fine and you're not really going to run into a after MD5 hash, unfortunately. So the other way you can test this is just to play it and make sure that it's working, which is important, and make sure that the translation took. Now, I typically prefer to play on the original consoles, but just for this demonstration, I'm going to be using EPSXE to check my image on my computer. That way I don't need to transfer it anywhere, and I don't need to waste a disk burning this. So I'm just going to open this up. I'll navigate over to my patched version, and let's make sure this runs. So as you can see, I just played enough to get in game here, but this is indeed working because of the changed boot up, and this is all displaying in English as well as Japanese. So I can certainly say that this is a successfully patched disk image. With that all done, we can exit out of this. The next one we can take a look at is our Symphony of the Night quality hack. So here I already have this extracted out. This is just a zip file. And if we go in here, there's Russian, English readmes, which I'd recommend you check out, as well as a PPF file. And this is short for PlayStation Patch File, which is going to be pretty self-explanatory. So right here, if you want, you can check out the readme itself. As you can see, it provides us with some MD5 hashes, and there are going to be a few things that I will show you right here. First of all, as you can see, it's saying data track and audio track. And if we go to our actual game itself, like here, as you can see, I only have one bin file. Now this is a common thing with PlayStation 1 games where they can have Red Book audio, so sometimes games might have different actual physical tracks on them. And the thing is, if you rip using ImgBurn, everything goes into one bin file right here. And there's nothing wrong with that, but a lot of times other people who have ripped their games, or I guess in this case, putting it bluntly, a lot of copies that you might find online on the internet available for download are going to have your Q file, your bin file, and then a ton of other bin files for the audio tracks. The problem here that we run into is that if I MD5 check this bin file and compare it to this MD5 hash, it's going to be different because this MD5 hash is completely different since it's only a data file and mine is data with audio. Now I'm going to say this, in my experience, when I have patched these, even without the matching MD5 hash, if the disk has been ripped successfully myself, if there wasn't any disk read errors with it, and if it is the exact version that I need right there, typically it works just fine. I haven't run into any negative issues with that, so I'm just going to let you all know. It might not be the most recommended thing, your mileage may vary on there, but I'm not going to be showing this with disk images that have the bin file as a separate data track and then a lot of other bin files for their audio tracks, simply because that's not how I'm able to rip them with ImgBurn. But good news, because the data track is typically first and that's what's dumped into the bin file, typically when I've been able to patch these, they work just fine. So with a PPF file, let's go ahead and check this out. So for this, assuming you have your game as well as your patch that you want to load onto it, go over to wherever you saved your utilities, and you're going to need to extract this PDX-POM3 file. And once you extract it, it's going to go into its own folder. And here, you're going to find PPF-O-Matic 3.exe, and just launch this. Now here, it's about the same thing, just select your ISO file, again your disk image, so click on the floppy button right here. From here, go to your game file that you'd like to patch, so mine's Symphony of the Night, and my bin file, and find your patch. So again, browse for your PPF file. I'm going to go over to the quality hack folder and the PPF file. So once that's all done, it will give you some information here. And now that you're sure that this is the file you want to patch, click on apply. And it will say patch successfully applied, burn image to CD now. And we can quit out of here. Do you want to quit? Yes. So at that point, here in our patched games, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, this exact image is the one that contains the quality hack patch. And again, we can make sure that this works utilizing a emulator or whatever method you want to play to use this. This is going to be one of the few times I actually recommend trying this with an emulator, just so you don't have to waste all that much time, burning this to a disk and having it not work, or transferring it to another system.
Die, monster! You don't belong in this world!
It was not by my hand that I'm once again given flesh.
Die, monster! You don't belong in this world!
Alright, so as you can see, this is also working just fine, and there's a few little differences here that you have to look out for, but this is indeed the Quality Hack version 1.2 installed, from what we can see with a few little changes, as well as the main splash screen having the logo on it as well. So now that this is done, we can exit out of this, and again, this is another game that has been successfully patched. For our last patch, this one is going to be a bit different. This is going to be Resident Evil Remaster version, which here I'm just going to extract this out, and all we get is a XDelta file. So XDelta files are really about the same idea as everything else, and this is a quite bigger patch. So for this, we're going to need to make sure we have our patch available, make sure we have the game available, go to wherever you've saved everything, and extract Delta Patcher to its own directory. Now right here, we can go into Delta Patcher and open up Delta Patcher exe. From here, select your original file. So for this, I'll go to my games, Resident Evil Director's Cut DualShock version, and go to the XDelta patch. And you can just pick this, come back up here, and go to your patch itself, click on that, and click on Apply Patch once you're ready. And as you can see, that is all we had to do. So you can press OK, exit out of here, and now if we go to our games patched, Resident Evil, this is our copy that has been modified. So just like before, we're going to test this out and make sure it works. Alright, so as you can see, this was working as well too, so this is 3 for 3 for successfully patched games. Now as you can see, that's about it for this tutorial. Hopefully this helped you all out, and hopefully this did not seem as hard as you might have thought it was at the beginning. Now the best part is, I would recommend going on to romhacking.net or many other ROM hacking sites, seeing what's available, and maybe grab some of your favorite games and patch them. This might also be one of the times where you could play a game in your native language for the first time, such as Persona 2 Innocent Sin. Again, I actually bought this game when I found out there was a translation, and I do look forward to finally being able to play this. There are many more ROM hacks that are available, and romhacking.net is certainly not the only resource. However, in my opinion, it is one of the easiest ones and one of the best collections, I guess, libraries that you can stumble upon. But aside from that, I really have nothing else to do with romhacking.net. I just really like this site, and this is what I would recommend. Anyways, this is Mr. Mario signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, a like would absolutely be appreciated, and if you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too.